We have caregivers or grandparents who get a 1-year-old when they're 65 and they're expected to raise that child to 18 years or beyond. And by the time that child becomes an adult, they're 80, 85. Our oldest caregiver now is 92 with a teenager.
Hello, and welcome to Not Born Yesterday, a podcast dedicated to older adults and the challenges and joys of aging. I'm Miriam Goodman. Not Born Yesterday examines the problems and solutions of growing older today. We bring you the wisdom and voices of experts in the field of aging and offer tips on how to feel your best, use your lifetime skills and experience, and make the coming months and years as fulfilling as possible.
I'm Lynn Winter Gross. Not Born Yesterday is brought to you by Next Village San Francisco, a local nonprofit providing older adults with support to help age in place.
Today on Not Born Yesterday, we're talking about a group of caregivers who are often invisible but are vitally important, grandparents who are raising their grandchildren. This is probably not the retirement they envisioned, but thousands of grandparents are stepping back into the parenting role, either because of illness, crises, addiction, incarceration, or the death of a parent. These grandparents come from all parts of society, from the wealthy to the struggling, yet they step in as an act of love, resilience, and sacrifice. Joining us today is Cynthia Green, a social worker who works closely with grand families as director of the Edgewood Kinship Program in San Francisco. This program supports 250 family members in San Francisco who often step up when abuse, crises, or violence separates children from their parents. Welcome, Cynthia.
Cynthia, when people hear that grandparents are raising their grandchildren, they probably don't realize how common this is. Can you help us understand the scope of this issue?
Yes, we think that there are about 85,000 grandparent households throughout the United States. Some of the grandparents are raising their kids formally, which means the kids were placed there by a child protective services. But by far, most grandparents are taking care of grandkids informally. And so it's very hard to get a count of those grandparents because they're stepping up and they're doing it silently on their own.
So let's start by recognizing that grandparents raising grandchildren often begins with a crisis. So what is the family decision when it comes to care for the grandparents?
It generally starts with a grandparent having a concern about their grandchildren over a long period of time and wondering what they can do about it. Most parents who aren't able to raise their children in a safe and well manner are experiencing some type of substance abuse crisis or some type of mental health crisis. And grandparents will see that over the period of time and wonder what their rights are. And they spend a lot of time trying to explore what that is before they generally go over and just get the grandchildren, or the grandchildren visit and they won't let the grandchildren grow home. That can take, like I said, it happens over a period of time. But if the children go to the grandparents' house formally, it usually means that there's been a child protective services case opened. There are social workers investigating some abuse or neglect and have determined that the child can't stay with the parents and will start looking for placements for the child. There aren't a lot of foster homes available, as you probably know, and so county CPS agencies start reaching out to families, and they usually start with grandparents.
What are the common misrepresentations or the misperceptions about the grandchildren households?
I've had people tell me that, the quote, the apple doesn't fall far from the tree. And so they will assume that if a parent is having a difficult time, that the grandparent had something to do with that. So if the parent isn't safe, then the grandparent isn't safe as well. And that is a big misconception. We also think that people assume that grandparents can navigate systems, the CPS system, the guardianship system, that those are easy to tap into and to learn about, when in fact they're very difficult. It takes, it's a process applying for guardianship. And people need support to do it, just the amount of paperwork that you've got to complete in order to get a legal guardianship is very difficult, and it's not automatically granted. And so it's not easy, and people might not know that even if a grandparent, if the child is in this in under child protective services, grandparents go through full background checks, criminal background checks, housing inspections. They have to do everything that foster parents do in order to have custody of their grandkids.
This is on top of all the anxiety they're also feeling because of what's going on in their lives. All this
Exactly.
paperwork. Yeah.
Exactly.
What other reasons have you seen that grandparents have to raise their grandchildren? We heard about mental issues. What else? What other? Some of the other reasons?
I'd say the top reason is substance abuse issues. I've been at Edgewood for going on 25 years, and had been in this business for 40 years, starting back in the 80s. And, Edgewood's program started back when there was a crack epidemic. And so that was the drug everybody was using on the streets. And now it's opioids, it's fentanyl addictions. So that's the primary reason that we see over and over again. But also, parent incarceration, parents that are just, physically not able to be with the child because they've been incarcerated. And again, mental health issues, and just, parents who are just they're not ready. They're not ready to parent. They don't have what it takes yet.
So it must be traumatic for the children as well, especially if the parent has died or has, as you've talked about, mental health issues. And for the grandparents, it impacts them financially, emotionally, and physically. When in the process does the kinship program get involved? And now also, what if the grandparents don't live nearby?
Kids are grieving the loss of their parents, who, even if they're abused or neglected, they still very much love their parents. And in addition, I see grandparents who might also be grieving an adult child. It causes grief to lose your child to mental health issues or substance abuse issues, and to see that the struggle. So you're trying to take care of your grandkids, where at the same time you're probably trying to take care of your adult child as well. So we experience that a lot. And so, Edgewood has services to help both the kinship child and the caregivers deal with grief. For instance, we have a therapist, and we offer mental health services. We help caregivers to navigate systems, housing systems. It's not unusual to see a grandparent that's retired and living in a senior home with one bedroom. And now she or he might now have 2 or 3 kids that's in that one bedroom with them, and a housing complex saying, we have to evict you because we can't take kids here. And so helping them find that resource. Families, Edgewood offers case management. Each grandparent gets assigned a case manager to help them navigate these systems and these resources. It's additional food cost. So we have a food pantry that opens twice a month, where we actually offer proteins like chicken and fresh vegetables to help cover those grocery costs. One of the biggest things that we hear grandparents need support with is helping kids through school. So kids, if they go to their grandma's house, might actually have to go to a school, particularly if their grandma lives in a different city or neighborhood. And so getting their school records, getting them individualized educational plans so that they can continue on and not have such big disruptions in their school life. So a case manager can help a caregiver figure that out. And respite is a huge thing. Grandparents need a break. And sometimes being a caregiver means that, you know, well, it definitely means your social life has now been disrupted. You might not have as many friends, or you can't go out with your friends, or even go to your church or the things that you used to because now you have kids. And so we offer respite. We have a youth provider who will come and get the kids and take them out so that the grandma or grandfather can do whatever it is that they need to do for that day. Or we will offer financial assistance where the grandparent finds their own trusted babysitter and will pay that babysitter for them.
Let's talk about the children. What are their emotional lives like when they stop living with their parent?
Yeah, that definitely, children who experience separation from their birth parent, particularly their mother, are going to have intense feelings of grief and loss. And my experience is that oftentimes they will take that out on the grandparent. you know. And so when they come to our center, we don't see any issues with kids. And then they'll go straight back to grandma and just give her the most challenging time ever. And it's very hard trying to convince grandparents that kids do that because you're the safe space to do that with. They need to, sometimes they let it go and they let it go with you and not with other people. So we do offer some mental health services for kids. And I've been in the van with those kids, and I've had kids driving through town, and I had a kid point out a person passed out on the street and say, "That's my dad." Or I was on another outing, and there were some, street workers, and a kid said, "That's my mom." And so they have told me that they love being on activities with other kids, with their grandparents, because they don't have to feel that shame, and that they do go to school and feel ashamed of what's happened in their families, particularly if they have a parent that is very visibly mentally ill or a substance abuser in the community, and other people know, and people say, "Oh, I saw your mom. Your mom's a fentanyl addict." And so being on an outing with our group, it's like, "Hey, you're being raised by your grandparent. Me too." And so the kids build a camaraderie with each other, and they learn to trust each other. Um,
You've got the challenge of filling the needs of the grandparents and filling the needs of the grandchildren, who are often different.
we have caregivers or grandparents who get a 1-year-old when they're 65, and they're expected to raise that child to 18 years or beyond. And by the time that child becomes an adult, they're 80, 85. Our oldest caregiver now is 92 with a teenager. And we overwhelmingly see grandparents who are struggling with their own medical issues. So many people with arthritis and hypertension and diabetes, and just struggling to keep up day to day. And so even today, we have a health and nutrition class for grandparents, just to help them through as best we can that way.
When the grandparent steps in, the children probably feel the love and stability of still being with family, but they also feel loss. So, Cynthia, when does the support system come in, and how does that make a difference?
Yes, we definitely have heard kids express that's how they feel. We try to connect with caregivers as early as we can. We do get a lot of referrals from CPS, and in fact, we are contracted with them. So as soon as a kid is placed with a grandparent, is the best time to get connected with us, particularly
CPS is Child Protective
Child
Services.
Protective Services. Overwhelmingly for the past 25 years, all research has indicated that kids are going to do so much better with their grandparents than they are going to be with foster parents. And that's why we really want these relationships to happen. The kids will have much better outcomes when it comes to their emotion, when it comes to their academics, when it comes to being successful adults. Their best chance, if they can't live with their parents, is to be with their grandparents.
I was going to ask you how the decision's made between the child living with their grandparents or the child going to foster care. How is that decision made?
Well, legally, Child Protective Services has to consider eligible relatives first. Um, and so when a child goes into care, um, I know in our region, our Child Protective Services agencies has family finding workers. And so it starts with when a CPS worker tells a parent, we're going to remove your family, or you're going to remove your child. Can you give us a list of potential family members who would be able to care for your child? It starts right there.
What about babies and children, little children? Are they harder to get the grandparent to consent to taking care of them, or are the grandparents usually willing no matter the age?
Yeah, grandparents are willing no matter the age. The only difference that I see when it comes to a child that young, that if that child comes to a grandparent through the Child Protective Services system, there is a lot more pressure to make that relationship permanent. So Child Protective Services is really going to pressure the grandparent to make a formal adoption. Um, as opposed to an older kid because it's easier for Child Protective Services to actually adopt out an infant. And so there's more options for adoption. So they will tell a grandparent, get to adoption right away, um, because we have other parents waiting for an infant or a toddler, as opposed to an older child. People don't adopt 12-year-olds or 13-year-olds or 15-year-olds.
So, one thing I wanted to get back to is the conception that people have about who are the grandparents who are raising grandchildren.
My perfect example for that is that former President Barack Obama was raised by his grandmother, right?
And
You
he did
know,
okay.
And he did. He came out okay. So yes, it crosses all socioeconomic levels. Mental health issues don't know those type of boundaries. If something happens to a parent where they, pass away, there's no boundary on that, right? So, but there are different levels of shame. I've met a lot of caregivers who felt shame that this had happened to their family or their family, their adult child had a substance abuse issue, and so they had to take the grandparents. And so I've seen a lot of different types of grandparents struggle with that issue. And when they do struggle with it, they become silent and they don't let everybody know what they're doing or that they need support, or maybe won't even reach out to us the way that they need to.
If somebody in another community wants to find a program like yours, how do they look in another city to find a program like yours?
Yeah, there is people can there are kinship programs throughout the state of California, but also across the nation. And so it would be probably just a simple search. We help people identify programs across the nation, across the state at any time. We have a website that's ikinship.org. and people can actually send us an email, a private, confidential email, and say they live in another state, as saying that they're taking care of their grandchild and they need a service, and we'll search that out for them and tell them where to go.
Thank you. Thank you, Cynthia Green, Director of the Kinship Project.
Thank you. Thank you.
Today on News You Can Use, we want to remind you again that falling is not inevitable. Although it happens all too frequently to people over 65 or so, you're never too old to upgrade your balance and muscle strength. One exercise we like is called the flamingo. Stand on one foot as you brush your teeth. Then you can hold on to the counter if you have to, but try not holding on when you can. And then switch feet. You can also do the flamingo when you're talking on the phone or washing dishes. In the beginning, always do it near something you can lean on just in case. But as you progress, you can try it anywhere. You can alternate this one by standing heel to toe as if you're on a balance beam too. But again, begin with a counter or wall nearby.
And try carrying free weights in each hand as you walk around the house for a few minutes every day. This will work major muscle groups and improve balance, posture, and grip. Start with 30 seconds and move up to 60 seconds. Next, work on your standing from a sitting position. Stand up from sitting on a sturdy chair and don't use your hands. Try it at least 10 times a day. This will strengthen your legs and core and help prevent falls.
And make sure you walk at least 30 minutes every day. This builds stamina and improves your balance. Try hills and steps when possible. Every walk you take and every balance exercise you do is a powerful tool to build your strength and stability and prevents a fall. You can even try these when listening to your favorite podcast.
Mimsy, I tried standing on one foot while I was brushing my teeth last night, and it ain't easy. And that's our podcast for today. Our thanks go to our guest, Cynthia Green from the Kinship Program. You can learn more about Next Village San Francisco at their website, nextvillagesf.org, or call them at 415-888-2868. Our theme music is from Hook Sounds, and Jason Dahlstedt is our engineer. And we thank you for listening. We'd love to hear what you would like us to discover and discuss. Please contact us at notbornyesterdaypodcast.org. Follow us on Facebook and Instagram, and subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts. All these are free, and they let us know our audience better. Be well, stay strong, and remember, you weren't born yesterday. I'm Lynn Winter Gross.
And I'm Miriam Goodman.